Hello everybody, Matt from TDM Style here, and today we're kicking off a new series of videos called Know Your Product. So these days there are a ton of different hairstyling products available, and they all have different names and types and things, and some of those names seem to be used interchangeably, so it can get a little bit confusing. I mean, you've got things like waxes, clays, pomades, creams, pastes, gels. The list goes on, and it can be a lot to digest. Especially if you're just trying to figure out what kind of product might work best for you, for your hair type, or for a specific style that you're going for. So with all that in mind, the goal of this new series will be to take one type of product per episode, and we're going to break down what that type of product actually is, what's in it that classifies it as that type of product, and then we'll get into some other details like what sort of hair lengths and styles that those products would be good for, hold, consistency, and all that kind of stuff. So I thought we would kick off the series with waxes, since that seems to be one of the more broad categories that can be a little bit more confusing. So what actually is a hair wax? This term seems to get thrown around quite a lot in the hair product industry, especially with companies that have a line of several styling products. They might say, here's our line of styling waxes, and then in that line they'll have like a pomade and a clay and a cream and a whatever. So it's kind of confusing. It's like, well, are they waxes or are they not? So a good example of this actually is the last video I uploaded, which I'll link right up here, where I reviewed the Master Wellcomb product line. So they've got 3 different styling products, all of which are great, but they call them styling waxes. But one's a pomade, one is a wax, and one is a sort of hybrid, but it's really also a wax. But we'll get into that later. So what actually makes a product truly a styling wax? So it might sound simple, but to me, a styling product isn't a wax unless it has some type of, you guessed it, wax in the main ingredients. Now, I mean, if we go like super simple and basic, we can look at something like this, which is just basically straight up beeswax. I mean, this brings back memories of like my middle school days, which we won't talk about that. But I mean, that's clearly a wax. It's basically just beeswax. Now, where it starts to get a bit more confusing, a lot of these modern products will use a wax as a base, and then they have all these other kind of ingredients in there. So it's not, let's say, a pure wax. I mean, most things aren't. But to me, if it has a wax or a couple different kinds of waxes in the main ingredients, then I'll call it a styling wax. So I sort of went digging through my shelf of hair products, and I pulled out a bunch of examples, so let's take a look at some. So some products will make it easy on you, like this one right here. It's just called wax. So in a similar stride, we've got things like TG Bedhead Matte Separation Wax, we've got Sponge Wax by Hans de Foucault. So these all have wax in the name, so at least that kind of gives you a little bit easier way to discern what type of product they really are. So when we take a look at these 3 products, we can actually see how they run the gamut here, basically, where we've got Sponge Wax with a medium hold matte finish, we've got the TG Matte Separation Wax with a high hold and the matte finish, and then we've got the Master Wellcomb Wax, which boasts a maximum hold with a medium shine. Now we've also got things like the TG Bedhead Hair Stick, remember this guy? Now this is a wax-based product, and this is obviously quite a bit different because this is essentially like a hard stick. It's not as creamy or soft as most other wax-based products. But you can get a similar result. I would say this has something like a medium hold with a medium shine. Now we can look at a few examples of where it starts to get a little bit more confusing with these sort of hybrid products or waxes that don't call themselves waxes. So going back to Master Wellcomb, we've got this Crew Comb product, which they just call it a hair styling prep. Now to me, I consider this a wax because it does have both emulsifying wax and lanolin in it, but I can see why they didn't call it a straight wax because it does behave a little bit differently. I mean, it also kind of behaves like a leave-in conditioner, so yeah, there's that. By a similar token, we've got things like Texturizer by Hairbond. Now they call this a hair cream, but really it's based on lanolin and beeswax. This does have a few other things in there, so this is a little bit creamier, it's a little bit of a lighter hold. They rate it 3 out of 5 for the hold, and this does give you a little bit more towards like a medium shine. And now I think probably my personal favorite of the lot is Hard Cream Pomade by Baxter of California. And this could also possibly be the most confusing of the lot because it's called a hard cream, and it's also called a pomade, but it's really more like a wax. So you can see how this can be a little bit overwhelming at first. I mean, but if we look at Baxter's line of products, their entire line of styling products, they call them all pomades. And then they break them down into things like hard cream pomade, clay pomade, so on and so forth. So really, the only way to know what the product really is to look at the ingredients list. So what can you expect to get out of a styling wax? Usually they have anywhere from a medium to a high hold, and typically many of them have a matte finish, or some have sort of like a very mild shine or a kind of natural finish. Now when you actually open up the jar and we talk about the consistency of the product itself, they are typically a little bit creamy but a little bit firm at the same time. So they do take a little bit of work to emulsify them in your hands before you want to apply them to your hair. But they typically leave your hair feeling very pliable, very reworkable throughout the day, and since most of them seem to be water-based, they are usually pretty easy to wash out. So what sort of hair types and hairstyles do waxes work well for? Well, the good news is waxes are extremely versatile. If you've got shorter hair, waxes are great for creating a lot of texture. You can do a sort of spiked up style. If you've got more of a medium length hair, you can do things like a quiff or just sort of a messy bedhead look. If you've got longer hair like mine, you can do a sort of classic pompadour. So there really are a lot of different things that you can do with waxes. Now, if you've got long hair like mine and you're going for more of like a looser flowing hairstyle, or if you've just got really long hair, a wax would not be the most beneficial for you. You would probably be better off with something like a hair cream, but we'll talk about that more in the hair creams episode. So I think that's about all there is to know about hair waxes. So I hope you guys found this video informative. If you liked it, please do hit the thumbs up down below. That'll really help me out. And if you've got a particular class of products that you'd like me to cover next, please leave me a comment. That's all for now, guys. As always, thanks so much for coming by and watching, and we'll see you at the next one.